Right. So it is recording. Hi, so we are really happy to welcome Joana Moll in the context of our creative coding series, which is a series of conversations with creative technologists, designers, and artists, where we discuss creative coding processes and kind of more like experimental approaches in the field of interaction design. And I'm here today with the first year students for media design, Andreas Giesin, professor in master media design this year. So thank you so much, Joana, for joining us today. We're so lucky. So you are a researcher, artist, and your work really critically explores really important topics today that are actually really near to the type of topics that we explore here in the program. You look at things such as internet materiality, surveillance, and social profiling. And then I see Manon joining another student from second year joining online. So yes, we wanted to invite you to know more about those topics, and thank you again for accepting our invitation. And I will just hi Manon. That's Manon, right?
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
So Joana was just about to start, so just make sure you're on mute, Manon. Okay.
Okay.
Nice, perfect. So Joana, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexa, for the very, very nice and generous introduction. Yeah, as I said, it's a pity we couldn't schedule this in a way that it could fit with my Basel trip. But anyway, I'm happy. I'm very happy to be here. Also, I love Geneva. It's a city I really like to visit from time to time. But anyway.
You came for the mapping festival, right? A few years ago. Yeah, I remember. I went to your talk. Yeah.
It seems like 10 years ago, though. After pandemic and everything, I think it happens to every one of us, right? We just completely lost track of time. So anyway, it's stressing. But well, thanks a lot, and I'm very happy that you invited me to a creative coding class as well, and also like this intersection with critical issues, because I started to work with critical issues in technology when I learned how to code, and that was very, very important to me, because without being able to code and to really touch part of the materiality, let's say, or what something that gives you some agency, especially in the internet, it's very hard to understand how things work. And it's very hard to criticize things when you don't understand how things work. So for me, it was really the beginning of everything, really, to start coding. I came from art, and then I did this master degree in digital art, and there is where I learned how to code. Anyway, it's fun. I love it. Now I get to do it less and less because I focus much more in concept and production, sadly. But I love it. It's just, anyway. So as Alexis said, I'm going to present, as Alexis, we talked to you by email, my 3 works and one that's upcoming on the materiality of data. Which I think is particularly critical to reveal that now there is much more awareness than there used to be. I don't think it's enough by far, but when I started working this topic in 2013, you couldn't barely find any information on the internet about the heavy environmental toll of data centers, and so on. It was something like, it was very specific, very academic, and it wasn't seen as some sort of criticism. It just studied efficiency in computing processes. That's it, right? So there was any critical discussion around it whatsoever. So I'm happy that things are evolving a little bit more in that sense. And well, that's what I'm here to discuss anyway, sort of my journey into the materiality of data for now. So I'm going to start with the project. I'm going to share the screen because it's okay, right? You're going to see everything. You disabled participant screen sharing.
I just give you the access. Here you go. Yeah, you should be able to now.
There's so many permissions in
no, I know.
Zoom, but still I prefer it to a Teams, so I really appreciate it. Because Teams, it's terrible. I mean, especially when you run in Linux, it's just terrible. It doesn't work. Anyway, so this project, it's really simple. It's just exactly as it is. There's nothing else behind it. And I remember that I just coded like in 3 or 4 hours. And I didn't even need that because, I was just like spending more time on choosing the font size and, the correct message than anything else. But that doesn't mean that it took me like a long time to do the research to get to this project, right? So this project, I started to research environmental impact of data in 2013. And it came out from a very stupid anecdote. I mean, I remember I was in my studio, I was looking at the computer, and I just said, I just was wondering, like, this can't come for free. This has to have some sort of impact, right? I mean, everything that I'm looking at the screen right now. And right after I asked this question to myself, I felt so stupid, like really traumatically stupid. It's like, well, of course, things are not working just because there has to be a lot of electricity and a lot of resources, and let alone like all the material impacts or environmental cost of building devices that we are using. But up to that day, I did not question this whatsoever. And I was very worried. I was much worried about me not wondering than the real impact that this might or might not have. Yeah. So I started to research. I didn't find a lot of information. I found a wonderful article in a blog that sort of talked about this and referenced an article. And that's it. So I built a piece out of this. I spent like quite some time trying to find more information, but it was very hard. And we're talking about 2013, right? It's not that far away. I mean, it's far, but it's not that crazy far away. So I built this piece, and this piece, it's basically talking about environmental impacts of data, especially Google. I found that tackling Google was important because it's something that everybody used. So the message would be very, very clear. And it quantifies the amount of CO2 emissions derived from the Google visits to google.com per second. Back then it was 50,000 visits per second. I didn't update the project. I released this in 2014. So I found out through this article where it says that transferring 1 megabyte of information equals 7.072 grams of CO2. But that's, it's like a super estimation. Yeah? And those numbers, you have just to take them as tiny references, because the internet is such a huge ecosystem. It's probably the biggest infrastructures that we ever built in this history of humanity, and it's really visible. But it needs so many different actors to operate that to quantify its exact emissions or energy consumption, it's technically impossible. Yeah. And this is a huge problem, because this is not reduced to the internet. This is basically this is the same, or it's the case for most of the global industries that are basically making our life possible the way we live it. Yeah. Anyway, we can discuss this in the Q&A, because it's quite interesting that we totally lost control of the energy consumption of our infrastructures. And we tend to think that those infrastructures are very reliable and very secure, but they're actually very fragile, because there's a lot of things that we can't control. And they're super centralized, that if one thing falls, all the rest of things also fall with it. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's questions or topics to discuss in the Q&A, because it's interesting. So with this project, I was very concerned about communicating this equation, sort of to embed this equation in the social imagination, like data has a materiality. Yeah, and I think this just was born, this idea or this need, for the fact that my own ingenuity on the issue, when I asked this question to myself, and I dare to ask this question, like something so obvious. And I felt it was very, very, very problematic that there wasn't, like, the materiality of data wasn't a public debate. That's it. It was not even there. And in many cases, it's still not there. Yeah, so it's very hard to tackle or to build like a more sustainable web, more sustainable society, when you don't even understand that this wastes energy and how much energy it wastes. So that was the main concern for me when I built this project. So that's why it's so minimalistic, because I felt like the message was really easy. You know, it had to be very crystal clear. That's it. So after this, I thought that I have a problem with numbers. Because, for example, in this project, you can see that there is a lot of numbers. There is a number that just keeps on getting bigger and bigger at a certain speed. Speed is not decreasing and the number is not going down. Yeah, so it talks about a quantity that is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you cannot stop it. It's not going backwards, right? But I feel like in terms of raising awareness or really understanding what this represents, like how many kilos of CO2, I mean, like the equivalent, right? How many 200,000 kilograms of CO2 represent? Yeah, how we can understand this. You don't understand it with numbers. So my next project, it took me a while to do it. I did it in 2016. I mean, the only fact I did in 2016 is because I was working in other projects at the moment, which I had to release first. So it took me a while. But also, this was a very simple project. Both of them are running in very easy JavaScript. And I think it's just like 3 or 4 lines of code. That's it. It's really, really simple. And this is represents the amount of trees that, on average, would be needed to absorb amount of CO2 emissions derived by the global visits to google.com per second. Yeah, and I feel like when you put trees, which is something that you can relate to, like all of us, you know, hack trees sometimes, touch a tree, you understand the materiality of trees, you understand the dimensions, you understand what it represents to lose a tree, right? So I feel like this project, it's not that just communicates materiality that data has, but it also allows you to observe the implications of it, right? That there is something, for something to exist, something has to disappear. Yeah, so there is all these trees that have to absorb all the CO2. Yeah, so anyway, it's just like several experiments that I did in that direction, with the main goal being, again, I'm repeating myself, putting this issue in the public arena. Yeah, to start opening a debate, or to make people understand that data has a materiality, even though we tend to think it doesn't. Yeah, because the materiality of the net, it's so displaced. Yeah, and I think this also how most of our industries work. Yeah, I mean, there is all these bad effects of building devices that we don't pay for it. Yeah, we just get the device and that's it. We just download all these companies, just totally offshore also the bad things. Yeah, all the pollution that it takes to build devices. Also, when the devices are not working anymore, they're being sent to Africa, or the huge dumpsters all over the world, right? But we don't see it. So it's very hard for us to connect with materiality of the digital, because everything is offshore and very far away. And now you're going to see a cat here, because it's my cat that just jumped on the table. Sorry, I have to take him out. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he knows, it doesn't learn. It's impossible to teach cats. Anyway, so that's like the second project. And after that, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see myself again. So also one of the central, as Alexia already said, one of the central topics in my work, just not like the materiality of data or the internet or devices, it's also to reveal all this very complex process within the digital economy, yeah, which goes from corporate surveillance, like tracking, and how all the ad tech ecosystem works, which the ad tech advertising industry is the main business model of the internet. And it's actually what sustains the web as we know it now. It's the business model of the internet, sadly. It could have gone many different ways, but it just went that way. I can discuss why this happened later if you want. And also, of course, at some point I became very concerned about the environmental impact of tracking technologies. Yeah. So I guess most of you or some of you are aware of it. Every time you go into a website, and that's how the business model of the internet or ad tech, advertising technology, ad tech works. you go into a website, and then there is like a bunch of parasites in the shape of cookies and other tracking technologies that they just suck data out of you as much as they can. Yeah, how you move the mouse, how many websites you visit, how long are you staying in a website, credit cards, if you pay with credit cards online, IDs, anyway, like really like thousands and thousands of different points of information. Everything that they can gather, they gather. Yeah, because it's for this business model, data, user data, it's the raw material. Yeah, that's where they make money from, right? So I was very concerned of the materiality that all these processes have, because this is a super opaque industry. Yeah, and it's basically everything is automatized, and most of these processes, even though they're being designed by humans, they're being performed by algorithms, and we don't have any access whatsoever. Yeah, so there is like this. Together today, I was talking with a physicist. I'm working in a project I want to explain you later. And said there is like dark energy, right? Like the dark energy of the universe, you know, that allow the universe to expand, but you can see it, you don't know what is it. Yeah, so it's a little bit the same. It's like all this dark energy of algorithms that allow an ecosystem to thrive, in that sense, in that case, the advertising technology, a tech ecosystem, and to make loads of money for some people, not for others. Yeah, but we can't see anything. I think it's a great metaphor. So as I had this concern, I did this project, which is called the hidden life of an Amazon user. I think I'm speaking very fast. I've just eaten 14 minutes, and I think I explained a lot of things. So
no, it's fine. Maybe we can have time with the Q&A. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Maybe we can go back to some important notions in the questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally I take much longer. And I had like this flu this week that led me totally out of space. Maybe that's
the cat.
reason.
The cat that made you.
Maybe it's a cat. So I started this project by purchasing this book. It's called The Life and Lessons and Rules for Success, written by Jeff Bezos. It has like really, really long subtitles. So The Journey, The Teachable Moments, and 10 Rules for Success, cultivated from the life and wisdom of Jeff Bezos. So sorry, I always laugh because you haven't seen the book probably, but it's so small. It's just like really tiny. It's just 62 pages, which I find it ridiculous, you know, for so much blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so much wisdom and so I always say the same when I give talks. But it's ridiculous, because one of the 10 rules that he gives, it just sleep 8 hours a day. Sure, that's how this guy made all his money, not by exploiting, you know, like user data at large. And well, anyway, so that's a book. And what I did, I had to do this several times, I had to say. I did the minimum steps required to buy this book. Yeah, so I didn't click on any suggestion. I didn't hover over any image. I didn't do anything. I went straight to the thing. So it was a total of 12 interfaces that were loaded. So there was like the homepage, where here in the search box, I put Jeff Bezos. This is all I got. Together with Jeff Bezos, I also had Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, etc., etc. Yeah, no surprise. And then I just picked this book because I thought it was a good idea. I read all the reviews, yeah, all the comments, blah, blah, blah. Then I added to the cart. This is the cart. More suggestions were served to me. Then I had to select the shipping address. Then I had to sign in. Then what was this? Yeah, then I just went to the shopping cart just to confirm the order and pay. Again, choose your shipping options. And you can see here, like a lot of suggestions from the same kind of people according to Amazon algorithm. One was, of course, the Microsoft guy, which I can't believe I forgot his name right now. Can't believe I forgot his name, Bill Gates. Yeah. Select the payment method, choose a billing address, again, review your order, and that's it. order has been accepted. This is just like the receipt. And again, more and more suggestions. This time they finally included a woman who was Michelle Obama. You know, first time, I guess I thought it was a guy, I don't know. Anyway, so even though it was just 12 interfaces, which I think is quite a lot, it could have been done in just 2 or 3 probably. The amount of code that was loaded, tracking code that was loaded behind those 12 interfaces was 80 megabytes of code. Yeah, and all this code had the sole purpose of sucking user data from me. Everything that I did went up, I went down, I scrolled up, I scrolled down, I hovered here, I hovered there, I introduced the shipping address, I introduced the payment method, I signed in, anything that you can imagine, right? And also everything that I did not do, yeah? And this equaled 10,000 pages of written code, a bit more, yeah? And again, this was also like this experiment of translating this concept of the materiality of data or tracking code, of Amazon tracking code in that case, in something that we could understand, like our body would shake when we would see it, right? Because again, I feel numbers are not enough. Yeah, are really not enough. And here in this tower of papers, this doesn't really matter what this paper says. Yeah, because we could just be hours, months reading it. And when we would finally understand the code would have changed, you know, like 10 times. So it doesn't really matter. We don't have one control whatsoever in what's inside, but I think we can really understand like the magnitude of the thing. And this was just one purchase with the minimum steps required. Yeah, I'm not saying that the same energy consumption to print this than to execute this code, right? I don't think there is like an equivalent here. It would be a very, very difficult calculation to make. But again, this is not the point. And the point of this project is not to offer like really precise data, it's to offer this general overview, like the tracking ecosystem. It's very talks about this double exploitation of the user, that the user is not just exploited by means of free labor in the sense that all user data is being extracted as we navigate the web, but also we have to assume part of the energy cost of such exploitation, because well, you know it's not that we are going to visit the web is coming to visit us, a cookie is coming to visit us, yeah, and all these processes of tracking start in our computer. And our computer is plugged at the electricity in our home, right? And so there is like a tiny portion. It's just like really the tip of the iceberg of how tracking technology works. It starts with us, and it's just not our data. It's also our energy in our home. Yeah. So I think this is really important to understand, because we don't tend to see it that way, and that's a very important factor. And what about approaching the surveillance program, it's about joining like digital rights with climate rights, yeah, or nature rights or climate justice, let's say. Yeah, and I don't think we tend to approach surveillance or the problem of very, very pervasive corporate practices when it comes to suck user data from this environmental perspective. And I think it's something that it's very powerful, and it's also real. And we have to tackle that. Yeah. So this leads me to the last project, which I'm gonna share. How am I gonna share this? Because it's not done yet. No, sorry, I forgot to show you the online version of this project. This project has this sort of the installation or like site-specific version of the project, and then it's available on the web. There is also 3 texts that I commissioned for this project. One is by Jussi Parikka, the other one is by Hara Rocha, and the last one is from Soren Paul and Christian Ulrik Andersen. That they do a lot of, well, they're sort of very well known for interface critique at large. Yeah. And this is the website. So the first interface you see is the homepage. So I put all the 12 interfaces along with the code behind all these interfaces. Yeah. So first interface, all the code that I found in the first interface. And if you scroll down, like just with your fingers, it will take you from 3 to 5 minutes to get to the second interface. Yes, it's also a way to understand, you know, Like if we would need to navigate all this code, would also be quite energy intensive for us. Yeah. And if you scroll down like this, like, without tricking the browser or anything, like just manually scrolling down, if such thing exists, it will take you about 15 minutes until you get to the last piece of code, last interface and last piece of code. Yeah, so I think it's also like to, again, to displace or decontextualize, I cannot pronounce this in English, sorry, code from its own space to another space, yeah, to another sort of, I call this plane, and we have to put in another context or to represent it different in order to understand its magnitude, yeah, or what it might represent in terms of energy cost. Yeah, it's, of course, it's not an equivalent, but just to take it out from this hidden space to put it in a very visible space where you have to navigate through it, and then we see this as something else. Yeah, we see this as something that it's heavy, and that's it, and we have to see it in another way. So this leads me to my last project, which let's see, I think it's that. Yeah, this is really on the making. Yeah, that's not that's just some. Can you see the screen? Like this icon just loading. Yeah. A lot of times I don't. Okay, perfect. It's confusing with some. I don't know if it's sharing just tabs or it's sharing like full screens. So this project is called Carbolytics. It's a new commission, and I'm doing this project in collaboration. Well, it's commissioned by Axioma, which is a wonderful art center in Ljubljana, in Slovenia. And I'm doing this in collaboration with the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. It's one of the biggest computing centers of computers in Europe. I think it's a third. And we're analyzing all the cookies and tracking technologies present in the top 1 million websites, which means it's the 1 million websites more visited on the web. Yeah. So here we are analyzing the energy consumption of the cookies. First, now we are up to date, just had like a meeting with them, and we analyzed 600,000 websites already, along with all the cookies, and have like massive numbers. It's really insane. I don't want to disclose anything here yet, but it's crazy. It's really crazy. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because this is just what we can control, which is the cookies that are being downloaded in our browser. How we are doing this research, they just program some, I wouldn't say bots, just machines that act like humans, and they go to visit those websites one time. Yeah, so then everything can be analyzed. Anyway, there's a massive number of cookies, and I think it's quite worth to reveal all this, along with we're still calculating the energy impact of it, but it's much more than we could preview at the beginning. And I'm happy and sad at the same time. But well, we'll see. We'll see what will happen. This project, I'm going to release it probably in February of March 2022. It's a project I've been, it's been on the making for 3 or 4 years now, when I first had this idea. But somehow I felt, I'm happy I didn't release it back then. First, because I wouldn't have done the same project, and second, because I don't feel like general public was really ready to understand this. Because I feel like now tracking technologies have been like really they turn into a public debate after Snowden revelation, but before then, and even I feel like now there's like a really general awareness of what tracking is and how it affects you, or it might affect you, right? Where before was a bit like, oh, really? Well, maybe, it was just something that wasn't like a fact, established fact. I feel now it's established fact, so I think people is more ready to understand this project. Anyway, so I think that's it for me. That's all the work I've been doing on data. Yeah, I would appreciate if you wouldn't share the URL of this project, because this is really for testing purposes and it's not open to the public yet.
Yeah, no worries. We can just take that part out of the
perfect.
talk.
Yeah, or just erase it, like some blurred or because it's really.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you, Joanna. I'm going to try to turn my computer without unplugging it so people can see the students. Maybe we can have more Q&A. I don't know, this is kind of unusual, but yeah, I hope you see more. Can you see more of us or?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you are against the light.
It's a little bit, yeah. but there are people, I promise. I mean, I guess if someone has a question, you can come forward so Joanna can meet you. Well, any questions so far, or any, I don't know, any notions that you like, maybe that we dive a bit deeper?
I'm just curious. I asked her directly.
Yeah, come here.
Oh, no, can I not come to?
Yeah, okay. So speak loud then.
So I'm just curious. So what? Yeah. So I'm just wondering, what can I do as a user to?
Yeah. I heard you. That's a really good question, and it's a question that I've been asked a lot, and I think that you shouldn't do much as a user, in the sense that this is a systemic problem. It has to be solved as such. I mean, advertising technology it's the main business model of the web, and you cannot change this on your own. Yeah, so I think like us users, most useful thing first to be aware of it, and second it's just to solve things in the community, but we have politicians and people that do laws, policymakers, that they have to regulate this and they have to do their jobs. So I think it's our job to try to sort of become watchdogs to see that they are doing this, because that's their job. Yeah, we can, because also like all these companies are really smart, and I was reading a very interesting article about this the other day, whereas before this notion of how much carbon or CO2 emissions a user in general, not a user in the internet, but a consumer had, it was like a really good marketing strategy for all these big companies, because suddenly they put the load and the responsibility on the consumer. The consumer has to be responsible to tackle or to manage their own emissions, but it's not really. No, companies have to make sure that they produce in ethical and coherent ways with our natural ecosystems, and they have to comply with a lot of things. And I feel it's the same with when we talk about sustainability in the web. It's not that we need to do or not do things, in the sense that's the system we're living in. We cannot negotiate with it, because the only thing we can do is to exclude ourselves, to stop using smartphones, to stop using the internet, to stop watching movies, and so on. But then you isolate yourself, you're just out of the system, and that's not fair, because you cannot change anything from there either. Yeah, you understand what I mean? So I think that as users, we can make sure to unionize or to work collectively to make sure that proper policies are being implemented. And this doesn't mean we need to go to the European Parliament, to knock on doors. Hey, please do your job. No, I mean, you have like people which is much closer around you. There is a lot of NGOs that do these things. There is a lot of politicians in your city hall. Or even you don't even have to go to the city hall. Even I don't know exactly how Gèneve is being organized, but I think like in Switzerland, you have like this direct democracy approach, right? Where you can vote for a lot of things. And if you get 100,000 signatures or something like this, you can vote about things, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe, to do some sort of proposal where, well, you cannot waste more than X gigabytes, Netflix, Amazon, or I don't know, but they should do the job. They cannot outsource the bad things derived from their products. And that's exactly what they do when they put all the load, all the responsibility to solve it on the user. Sorry, I hope that helped. I talked a lot, but I hope
No, it's great. I think it's any question on that or?
I was just wondering because you have a lot of, corporate logos at your work, and sometimes I know that artists go in the direction of maybe making a interface similar to an actual film, but not using Amazon. I was wondering if you had any legal issues or if you had any feedback from the companies themselves regarding the uses of the interfaces, I guess.
No, in terms of images, I've never had. Also, as artists, we are sort of protected in that way. I had a response from Google when I released the first project I showed you. It's funny because I released it in 2014, but then in 2018, there was an article at a very big American magazine for tech, Quartz, and sort of the project exploded, and suddenly like it was everywhere. But it reached Google, and Google wrote me, like the sustainability officer of Google wrote me and said that you have to change it to 0 because we are completely sustainable, blah, 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 blah. Want to talk to you. But they never answered far from that. I guess they understood I was not a threat and this wouldn't go farther. I don't know.
Then I have a more like a question related to your process, because this is your second class, right? Of creative coding. Second class? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the second class of creative coding for all the first year students. And you mentioned how you when you showed your first project, how you basically just starting, discovering it and doing it and finding your own ways of merging research and coding. And could you just maybe share a little bit more about that for our students? Like what are some advice that you could give, especially sometimes code can feel so frustrating and sometimes we feel like we want to give up. This is a really practical question I'm asking, but I think they're really in the deep of that right now, so maybe that's something that can help them and feel a bit more like motivation.
Totally, yeah, it's super frustrating to code. Super. I mean, I got so angry outside everything. I got ever so angry when things are not working, or you don't know what to do, how to do something, and you really want to do it. And I mean, for me, it's like, but at the end, when you succeed, it's such a great feeling. And also then you understand that you learned a lot. Yeah. And I think that coding, it's always going to be frustrating, at some point. I heard somewhere that you need to do 10,000 hours of something to be like very good at it. So just keep on pushing until you get there. And that's it. It's going to be easy. But I think it's really important because coding gives you a lot of agency as well in order to understand how this process works. And yeah, even if you get frustrated, just keep on going. It's important. And I think that that's with everything. I don't think there are people, probably, I mean, among you, there is some of you that you just get it much faster than others, right? But that doesn't mean that the fastest are better coders or that the slowest are bad coders at all. It's really trust the way you code, and maybe it's not going to be ultra efficient, but it's going to work, and that's the important thing.
For coming and then for taking the time talking to us. It was really interesting, and then definitely let's keep in touch when you're in Basel. We would love to visit and see what you up to there. Thank you, Joana.
Perfect. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye, Joana.